All right, so today we're going to have another show about the big myth about the ethics of buying properties at discounts. And the reason I didn't say wholesaling specifically is because at the end of the day, whether you're wholesaling it or flipping it or keeping it or doing an owner financing note, you got to be able to get a property well below market value from a seller, at least in our world, Michael, that knows what they're doing, contrary to popular belief. So we're going to talk about, really some myths we've heard out there in the streets. Michael and I, we tune into lots of stuff. There's lots of information everywhere in the world. And sometimes we hear some stuff that we disagree with. So we're going to kind of talk about what has been said out there just in the universe. And then we'll talk about how do we really see that. And at the end of the day, the reason we're doing this specific episode is because I feel like a lot of people, if they hear the wrong information, I don't know where it comes from, they might have these beliefs that they build, and then they won't do the business. They won't be successful.
Well, that's actually the case, right? We know that the case, right? That is the case. Like if you were listening and we get people all the time, like people who are new to the business, and they'll say something like, well, I heard wholesaling is illegal, or I heard that it's not good. So we know that there is bad information out there, and we are going to try and dispel some of that because we've been doing it long enough to know what the truth is. Yes. So are we going to talk about something that we heard recently specifically?
Yeah, we're going to talk about a few things. So we heard some stuff out on the internet, right? Just random stuff. You have to kind of piece it together sometimes, right? And the first thing that was said that was very, very completely bogus was that wholesaling as a business model doesn't work. The numbers don't work. It costs too much to get a customer. Your profit margins, like all basically someone was saying the economics of a wholesaling business don't work. And I can tell you, and then they said that
well, they say it did work, but now it doesn't work anymore. That was
like the market doesn't have like it's like some sort of like stupid anyway. So let's get into that. Like I'll let you start, Michael, because this is like
okay. So we heard it was a podcast, and
yeah,
it was a recognized guy in the industry, right? And he was making 2 points. One is that wholesaling as a business is dead today, and two, that it's fraud. That was really his second, right? So a couple of things, and we don't want to say who it is because it
just doesn't matter. Yeah,
right.
Matter.
But what we got from it, and we both agreed on it, and I when you sent it to me, I immediately put down in texting what I thought. What I got from it was that this was a guy who had a successful business for years. It did what a lot of people do, what you and I on some level hope to do, which is to hire somebody else to run it and work a few hours a week in it while we do other things. And not shockingly, his cost to buy properties went up significantly, and he was less profitable over time. Now, whether that was because he needed to tweak his business model and he didn't, whether that was because he may have had the wrong people running it and he didn't, we have no idea. I can't even venture to guess. But when someone tells me that I have a business that's sort of running on autopilot and I'm making tons of money from it for years, and then suddenly and then over time it makes less money, my thought is that happens all the time, right? That happens even if you're running it, it can happen. And certainly if you're not running it, you're paying people salaries and bonuses, it could happen. But it's easy to see in the environment that we're in, where competition and the market and all these things are going to affect your business over time. So his statement that it doesn't work anymore, I thought was ridiculous, right? The fact that it didn't, and he was limited to one small market, right? And that market was doing great for, I don't know, let's say 6, 8 years, 10 years, as long as people have been wholesaling. And that makes perfect sense. And we know guys doing it. But the idea to say that it doesn't work anywhere because he's been having issues and it's more difficult, to me seems absurd. That was number one. And number two was he was called in by the Federal Trade Commission to sit in a room with a bunch of FTC lawyers who were telling him I think he was asked to be an expert witness in a case against people who were basically selling education and let's say not delivering, right? And that happens all the time, right? People, and that's what the Federal Trade Commission gets involved with, right? Somebody who advertises that we're going to provide X, and then you don't provide X, right? You tell people you're going to make $1 million in 2 years, and then 99% of the people don't make a dollar. So he was called in, and these lawyers, in essence, convinced him over the course of a day or two that the whole concept of wholesaling, the way it's done in most of the country, but it doesn't even apply in New York. We'll talk about that more. The whole concept of wholesaling, where you are implying that you're going to be the buyer when you have no intention of actually being the buyer, is fraud. Not straight up fraud. He said it was like commercial fraud. And therefore, we have to change the way we do business, and we have to be 100% upfront and honest with everybody, which I'm fine with. And we have to basically tell people there's no way in hell I'm buying the property. And he said that in his area also it was impossible to do novations because they had changed some of the laws. Fine. And then he says,
being a broker.
Then he said you should just be. So that one thing before he gets to the realtor, and then he said you should what was that? I forgot. He said
option contract bullshit.
Yeah, that you should only use option contracts, and oh no, I'm sorry. Then he said that the seller doesn't care. So the seller doesn't care if you're going to close or not. The seller's not going to complain. Sellers are happy with the current business model. It's just that the way it's being presented to them is not honest enough to meet some kind of test that he had. So to me, that seems a little crazy, because if the sellers are happy with what we're providing for them, I don't see why it's going to be a problem. But then he said that today in his market, that there's no reason to wholesale, because the same pricing, you're going to get the same pricing when you list something as when you sell it to an investor. So those were things that to me sounded nuts. A lot of them, right? Because you can't tell me that we're committing fraud if we're then helping people who don't really care about what we're doing with it. And then to tell me that the pricing is, now maybe in his market it is the same. I'm shocked. I'd be shocked.
I can't see that being accurate.
I can't imagine that the average person there who is either listing or selling to an investor. So we each had a lot of issues with it, because it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. On the idea of being more transparent, I understand what he's saying, and I wish I could be super transparent every time. I just think that a lot of what he said doesn't apply in New York, and we can talk about why it doesn't really apply in New York, because it's very different in New York. But those are my thoughts on that podcast.
Yeah. So my thoughts are very similar. I mean, the biggest thing I didn't understand was, like, he was saying a lot of stuff that was like, it sounds good in theory, but like there was no like real evidence to back it up. Like, oh, my business model like is not great. It's so competitive. It's like, well, he wouldn't give any examples on like what exactly happened. He just was very vague about it.
Yeah, he wouldn't give any. Well, the only thing he said is that he said basically he wasn't making a lot. He wasn't making a lot of money on what did he say? $16,000 average wholesale fee, and when he did the deal, he was making 1,600 or something.
16%. He was making 6%. I think he says 6% like net margin or something like
that. Yeah, $20,000 on wholesale. He was making 1,600 or 1,500,000, or 16,000 on a wholesale fee, and he was making $1,000. Listen, we all have situations where our profitability goes down, but it can be due to a million different factors, right? Maybe we're too heavy on our staffing. Maybe we're spending too much on marketing. Maybe, the idea that the business doesn't work because your profitability went down is not the right answer, right? And also he said, which I thought was absurd, that nobody really makes a lot of money wholesaling, that everybody making wholesaling is making 100 to 200 grand. And he'd be shocked if there was anybody that was really netting seven figures, which is, I don't believe either. Right? I
know 10 guys on my two hands that can net seven figures.
Right. These guys are doing much more than, they're doing multiple seven-figure gross, and they're netting. It depends how you set up your business. We can all set up our business that's too heavy, so it really was a combination of those things that made him sell the business, right?
But then he never said who he sold it to and what he sold it for and what he sold. It was too vague.
Right. He wouldn't get into numbers either, which was a little weird, because
red flag.
Right. Why not? Yeah.
Why not? Exactly. It's like, it made
Give
no
us
sense.
general generalities. He wouldn't say it, and whatever. Maybe he's legally obligated not to. Maybe we want to give him want to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. But the idea that your business suddenly gets less profitable, but I think a lot of it had to go with these stupid lawyers who convinced him that everything he was doing was going to get him sent to prison or fined. So the combination of those two things convinced him. That was his reality, right? And the truth is, if you or I, if our business suddenly went significantly less profitable, right, which already would give us a sour taste in our stomach, and then suddenly the district attorney showed up in our office and said to us, I think getting complaints against you and you may be in trouble here, we might think about selling the business too. So that was his reality, right? So that was what caused him to make those assumptions. But its truth is, I don't think a lot of what he said was true. It might be very specific to his market, it might be very specific to his business, and I think I'm not afraid of an FTC lawyer. In fact, the FTC lawyer was not coming after somebody who was holding. They were coming after somebody who was selling education products and not delivering. And that guy had to pay a huge fine. And we still don't know who it is. He wouldn't say who it is. And he said that it was a settlement, so we're never going to know who it is. Somebody that he said it was somebody that we all heard of, which may or may not be true. And he said that guy was given a humongous fine and basically disappeared. Okay, but that was because he was selling education in a way that he shouldn't have, right? And I get, it's so funny because I got a comment on one of my YouTube videos. I went into YouTube video yesterday, and I'm brutally honest. I'm like, listen, if you're starting this business, you got to think in terms of 12 to 18 months to get a deal. It takes a long time in New York. Everything takes longer. It's not easy. So some guy wrote this long comment, like, with all due respect, like the way you sell it, why the hell should I even get into the business? So I responded to him like, I'd probably get a lot more money if I bullshit you and told you this was something you were going to make money in 3 months. I said, if that's what you want, there's plenty of gurus out there for it. I said, but this is not easy, and I tell people how not easy it is. So
but that's what builds your credibility, dude. Like that's why people like you.
It's not easy. It wasn't easy for me, right? I told people all the time. For 4 years, I bought at auction, and I didn't do any seller marketing. 6 years ago, I started doing 6-7 years ago, I started doing direct to seller marketing. It took me 8-9 months to get a deal, and I had money. I had money from the other deals. I was spending a ton on marketing, and it took me 8 or 9 months to close. So I said, now I have students that close them quicker, but you have to think in long term. Now, I'm sure the guys who were selling, the guy who he refers to, who got in trouble, was not telling people it's going to take them 12 to 18 months to close the deal. He was probably telling them you're going to get money in 3 months, and this is a great deal. So he that was his reality. I don't want to fault him for it, because I think if you and I went through the same combination of events at the same time, maybe we'd be on a podcast saying how terrible the world is and everything. But the truth is, it's just one small perspective, and there's a lot of other perspectives that I think you need to look at. And that clearly that guy is not part of a mastermind because if what's one of the beauties of the masterminds that we are a part of is that when things start looking bad, we show up somewhere, or we get on Facebook with other people doing it, and we go, hey, what are your thoughts on that? And these are people who can help you and make you feel better and make you understand that it's not what you're seeing in your little part of this country, and even a little part of the world, is not indicative of everything that's going on. So that's I think that's what happened to him. But you and I both got a bad taste in our mouth from everything.
It just made me seem like if someone heard that and they didn't have any experience, like you and I obviously are very experienced, so we can kind of like take that and like disagree with it. But if you're brand new and you want to learn how to make money, and you hear a show like that and you go, oh shit, like this is crazy.
Wholesaling's bad.
Wholesaling's bad. It's criminal. So I want to get into the criminal thing. So this is where, like, he did make a couple valid points that I do kind of agree with.
Well, he didn't say criminal fraud. He said commercial fraud. So I guess there's a difference. In other words, you weren't going. He didn't say that guy was going to jail. That guy was going to get fined, basically for
misrepresenting himself.
Misrepresentation, right? Which is what the FTC thing. He didn't say someone was going to show up and put you in handcuffs for stealing a house from someone. In fact, he said that the seller doesn't care. He said that you're not representing yourself correctly. That's what he said.
So what he's basically trying to say is that if someone has no intention on closing and they're only trying to assign the contract, it's commercial fraud, which is like basically a bait and switch. However, I'm going to tie this into New York. All right. So because it's the New York radio show. In New York, you can't do that because number one, you have to put a deposit down that's usually sizable.
Right.
And number two, if the contract isn't assignable, well, you're not going to have to worry about that because you can't even assign your contract. So I think in other states, where you can slip a contract under the rug or under the table and the seller can sign it. I think it's a little bit easier to probably have a claim be filed on you for that. But in New York, because the seller has an attorney and you have an attorney, it would almost be impossible to have a claim like that because the seller's represented, and it would never happen. Exactly. Because it's
and also the fact remains that in almost every time I'm going to contract, if I cannot assign the contract, I have to close.
Yeah.
So, and that's happened to you and me dozens, if not hundreds of times.
Yeah.
So if you open a wholesaling business in the middle of nowhere, America, and you openly say, I'm never going to close, I almost understand the idea that you are misrepresenting. But that does not happen in New York. In New York, you always know that you could better be able to close or else you're in trouble.
Well, you're not going to have a business if you're just going to try to wholesale everything, because there's going to be 100%. Deals that you can make money on that you have to close on, that if you tried to wholesale, you wouldn't have made any money. Like I closed on a house years ago with a bad tenant, and that thing's got $100,000 of equity in it. If I was a wholesaler only, I wouldn't have that property, right? So
I did a dozen of those during the pandemic. So
yeah, you're the expert.
Just getting them clear now.
That's
so it's a lot of what he said didn't apply in New York, but I think that you're 100% right. That if that was the first anyone had heard of the business, for the rest of their lives, they probably will tell everyone that asked them, "Oh, wholesaling is fraud. Is fraud, and it doesn't work anymore." And it's so easy to think that, right? So if you listen to that guy, you would think that. So we wanted to set the record straight.
Here's another nugget I got from the podcast that I disagreed with, and it had to do with the economics of marketing. Because like he was basically making a claim that like there's no motivated sellers in an economy now. Like he kind of tried to sound like righteous, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like it made no sense. I was kind of just like smirking. Anyway, basically, he was saying like a wholesaling is only good in a bad market because the seller, it's like, that belief would fuck up people more than the fraud.
Right. He said it 100%. He said it only works in a seller's market. It doesn't work in a balanced market. First of all, I don't know how long markets stay in balance. Probably not that long. What's that face?
What the fuck face?
Right.
I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
And that is clear. And think about it's coming from a guy who has only wholesaled in a seller's market, because it's been a seller's market. It's been a seller's market for really since
a hyper seller's market, right? Hyper seller's market.
Yeah. So 2009 it's been going, the market's been going up for 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
So it's easy to say that because I guarantee this guy wasn't doing it beforehand. But you and I both know people who have been doing this through every crappy market. We know dozens of guys who did it through 2007, 2008, 2009, when it was the opposite of what we're talking about. And some of these guys, some guys took risk and went bankrupt, but they're still in business. Some guys were super successful the whole time. So you and I know that this can be done in any market, right? There may be different challenges if it gets into a heavy buyer's market, which I don't think we're in yet, but it may be in certain parts of the country. Challenges where you're going to have to buy even at a deeper discount. Challenges that are going to come up when you're trying to sell the property. Those challenges could come up, but there is no set it and forget it business. You know what I mean? Things change, and you and I know that we both can be super successful in any market. And I get from all the time people thinking about starting and asking me, "Is this a good time to start?" I heard
it's time to plant a tree.
Right. Yesterday, if they didn't do it 200 years ago. So I heard this is a bad market. I heard it's a good market. I heard there's nothing to buy. I heard you can't sell it. You heard all that crap. It's all crap. I remember so well, 2007, 2008, I was in the middle of that New York, where it was really, in the whole country though, the world was falling apart real estate wise, right? We had a crazy run up due to absurd mortgage loans. And I was in the mortgage business, so I can tell you, you didn't say no to anybody. You didn't need credit, you didn't need a job, you didn't need assets, you didn't need anything. And you didn't have to put any money down. And then it all fell apart. And people would say, nobody's buying. That never was the case. There's never nobody buying, right? There's always somebody buying for a price. And as we're in a real estate market, and we have to be so thankful that we're in such an efficient market where there's always somebody buying if the price is right. Always, right? Maybe there'll be a month of panic where nobody buying. I remember during 9/11, like everybody went crazy, but because nobody was going on for a month. COVID the first month or first 5 months in New York. But like there's always somebody buying for the right price. It's real estate today is a commodity, right? It wasn't like that 20 years ago, right? What was 20 years ago? 2000? 25 years ago. 25 years ago, there was no internet. If you had a house for sale and nobody saw your sign in front of it and nobody saw your classified ad in the paper, it could sit there for 100 years. Well, 20 years anyway. But today, through the internet, there is always somebody looking for a property if the price is correct. So his idea that somehow the market is balanced, and also his idea that being a realtor, a retail realtor, is this easy schmeezy
in a balanced market makes no sense.
That you think it's easy to get a real estate deal, to get a deal as a realtor? I don't think it's easy. Look how many more people you're competing with to get a deal to list than you are with investors. There's 100,000 times more people who want to get that listing. So we both had serious issues with a lot of things he said.
Yeah, because it's not that it was a bad guy. It was just like stuff that if you're very advanced and sophisticated, like Michael and I are, shameless plug, you can listen to something like that and you just know that it's not all accurate. Because we have the experience to back up the falsehood, right? But if you're brand new, the reason we're doing this pod is because people probably listening to this are new, and I don't want you to think that just because you hear something, you don't like. So in summary, is this: wholesaling is very lucrative in any market if you know what you're doing and you have the skills to get it done. It's not fraud, especially in New York, because you have to literally have money to buy the properties and close. And the market to get the properties. One more thing before I continue the summary. He said something that I could not believe with my own 2 years. He said that his cost per acquisition at one time was $400 per acquisition. And I said, if I had my druthers and I could get a $400 cost per acquisition, I'd probably be doing this from the back of my yacht right now. Because my cost per acquisition is about $7,000. Right?
Mine's $8,000 to get a deal.
And we're pretty much
I don't think it ever was that low in your market or my market.
No,
right? But
$400. What? Dude, I spent $400 in 2 hours on marketing.
And he said it went from 400 to 4,000, which at first seems like, wow, it's a 10x.
Amazing. Tell me how to get that.
10x increase. But he said he's making $16,000 per deal. So you're spending $4,000 to get $16,000. Sounds great to me.
The math is pretty good.
Yeah, and then he said, well, he's only making $1,000 per deal. So then you got an operational
problem, bro.
Exactly. You got an operational problem. You got too many people working there. You're paying too much for whatever was going on.
Selling it for too cheap. I mean, I could sit there and fucking talk about that all day. So the point we're trying to say is like, you fucking marketing. If you're $400 cost per deal, like keep doing that. First of all, I doubt that. Anyway, I digress. It's crazy. But wholesaling is not fraudulent if you're in New York. First of all, if you're not in New York and you're listening to this. Yes, can you be more upfront with the seller if you do not plan to close? Of course, I think that is the right thing to do. However, you should really get yourself in a situation where you can align with somebody or find a private lender or a hard money lender where you can close on the house if you have to. So the truth is, it's going to force you to actually know what a deal is, right? A lot of wholesalers, they don't want to do the work of figuring out what something's worth. So they figure they quote unquote lock it up and see what happens, right? So if you actually like put the effort in to know what a deal is, and you can actually like demonstrate to someone how this is a deal and demonstrate to yourself that it's a deal, you're probably not going to want to back out. Because if you can make $50,000 flipping a property, like why would you cancel a contract? So a lot of it is because people are lazy and they don't want to actually do the work to actually figure out what something's worth. So I think that wasn't mentioned on that podcast, right? Like that was kind of went under the rug. Like anyway, but we just don't want to have people out there hear information that could prevent them from having a very successful career in real estate.
Right. That's one lesson. Two lessons I took from it. One is if you hear negatives, don't think that that's the only opinion. And second of all, if you're having a bad couple of months, don't go on a podcast and talk about how bad things are.
No, because you're gonna have two guys just coming back at it, doing a
ripping you a new one.
Ripping you a new one. Yeah, right. That's funny. Well, I hope everyone got value today. If you did, please leave us a review, subscribe, share the show with your friends on social media, and we'll see you on the next episode.